Hello, friends. I'm so glad to see you. Although I'm not seeing you, I'm seeing you, and I'm certainly seeing a lot of sparkling faces in your space, faces that make me feel very welcome each time I come. So I want to start off with a story. A wise woman who was traveling in the mountains found a precious stone in a stream. The next day, she met a traveler who was hungry, and the wise woman opened her bag to share some food with him. The hungry traveler saw the precious stone and asked the woman to give it to him. She did so without hesitation. The traveler left, rejoicing in his good fortune. He knew that this stone was worth enough to give him security for a lifetime. But a few days later, he came back to return the stone to the wise woman. "I've been thinking," he said. "I know how valuable the stone is, but I give it back to you in the hope that you can give me something much more precious. Give me what you have within you that allowed you to give me that stone. Give me what you have within you that allowed you to give me that stone." What we have within us. Jesus the Christ showed us what we're capable of, who we are, what we have. Joel Goldsmith said God exists in us, as us. This precious stone is not her security. It's not her source. Belief in a higher power is her source. Knowledge, actually. Knowledge in a higher power, that's her source. That's her security. And there's a difference between living from belief and from knowledge. And her knowledge of oneness never wavers. That's where she resides. Wherever I am, God is. Unity, second principle. God is individualized in us as the Christ Spirit, Christ within our indwelling Christ. Not out there, in here. Unity pamphlet says we align ourselves with the Christ standard, not as an ideal, but as a living reality. Because we are more than human. In Course in Miracles, Jesus reminds us there's nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The only difference between us now is that, let me stop for a second and see how you would fill that in. Let me read it again. Before I tell you what Jesus said, fill it in for yourself. There's nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that does not come from God. The only difference between us now is that I have nothing else. This reminds me of the story of Michelangelo creating his masterpiece, David. Now, supposedly he said he worked under the premise that David was already in that block of stone, just waiting to be revealed. His job was to chisel away at that which was not David. How do we chisel away at that which is not part of who we are so that we have nothing else? Chisel away at that which we have put there to protect ourselves, defend ourselves, perhaps to survive at times. Is it time to chisel away all that accumulated of thoughts, the beliefs, the emotions of decades that were not put there and that don't serve us? So the woman in the story has indeed done so. She has this I am within. So the stone means nothing. In writing this, I thought of Reverend Lafayette Seymour. I don't know if I ever spoke with you. He's a wonderful presence in DC. He's now passed on. And he always emphasized with us, I am, and the importance of the words that followed that. Eckhart Tolle in New Earth suggests that we say, there is unhappiness in me versus I am unhappy. That unhappiness has nothing to do with who you are. You are not unhappiness. You may feel unhappy. I love that idea. It's so much more dramatic saying there is unhappiness in me. Not sure how my friends would take it, But seriously, I do love that reminder about the words that I follow I am with. Adyashanti says we link our sense of self to what we feel, that they're enmeshed, they're fused. And he reminds us that what we feel does not tell us who and what we are. Anyway, in remembering Reverend Seymour's words, something a little different came to my mind. And I thought, I am not a fearful person. I am a peaceful person with lapses. I am not an impatient person. I am a patient person with lapses. I am not a judging person. I am an accepting person with many, many lapses. And yet, I've tasted moments of being like the woman in the story. I bet you have too. Perhaps like me, you're working on extending those moments to experience something even more precious, what we all have within us. If I asked you what brings you to church over the years, what might you say? A friend of mine who goes to my church says she comes back because she's a slow learner and a fast forgetter. Perhaps you come to be reminded of what you have within you. In fact, Reverend Seymour had on his card the word reminder. I found a quote that encapsulates one reason I keep coming back year after year to my church, and one reason I do the talks. It's from The Inner Voice of Love by Henry Nouwen. And he says, it is far from easy to keep living where God is. God gives you people who help to hold you in that place and call you back to it when you wander off. Yet another reason we need each other. To ask another, remind me of the truth of who I am. Give me another perspective. Tell me, please, what I am forgetting. Nouwen reminds us that we need one another, that we need people to keep us anchored in our true identity. The temptation to disconnect from that deep place in you where God dwells always remains. And he adds, we let other people run away with our sacred center. Let me add, we let circumstances run away with our sacred center. Now, there are many reasons we need each other. We need community, and perhaps especially at these times. Certainly at times when our soul's light no longer shines as it used to. But someone said, sometimes we just find those people who can see the light beneath all that dust and darkness that's been piled up. The kind of light workers who understand our broken souls and manage to pick us up and see the beauty in us when we find it so hard to find it ourselves. Light workers who understand our broken souls and manage to pick us up and see the beauty within us when we find so hard to find it ourselves. Wow. That's the person we need to go to and say, remind me of the truth of who I am. Remind me so I can make another choice, one that is based on that truth, not separation. Remind me what I sang with gusto last Sunday. You sang, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Oh yeah, that's right. Let it begin with me. We sing that every week at our church. I know at times you did it yours. I think Dana one time brought that in when I spoke. It's a special song to me. So each week we would sing, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Not, let it begin with me once I'm through ripping him apart for what he did. Or once this crisis ends. Let there be peace on earth and it will begin with me. Not, it will begin with me once the kid at the next table stops screaming. Or it will begin with me after I give her the finger for cutting me off in this car. Or once this crisis ends. How about, let there be peace on earth and it has begun with me. It has begun with me, even in the midst of today's unknown. How easily we forget we're capable of doing that someone else doesn't need to give us what they have within them. When asked what he thought the secret of the Buddha's smile was, Paul Brinton said it is, and it can only be, that he smiles at himself for searching all those years for what he already possessed. I've been told for years at my church and through friends what I possess. You've probably been told the same thing. Now, in the midst of this challenge, put up or suffer. Doesn't mean we can't be frightened at the same time. Allow the fear, acknowledge it. Don't let it hijack you. Don't buy into all the narrative up here. Adyashanti, the Zen Buddhist, says to make a distinction between the actual experience and those thoughts which generate more and more anxiety and fear. So in unity, we believe we have a choice at every moment. And I do these talks over and over, so I start to get that in my head a little more, hopefully. We believe that we can live from what we have within and that it's not based on our situation or circumstance or how the winds are blowing. We just have to adjust the sails. Course in Miracles says, by changing your mind, you have changed the most powerful device that was ever given you for change. Elie Wiesel shared an experience when he was in a concentration camp. He watched a starving man give his crust of bread to someone who he thought needed it more. And he realized we have the freedom to choose in one's heart no matter what happens around us. Phew. Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning talks about his experience at a concentration camp. And he left with the belief, the realization that everything can be taken from us but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances? Really? I have that within me? Well, that's what each of us has to decide. During a recent talk somewhere, someone asked the question, during these days, what are you etching into the universe? And I like that. What have I etched into the universe by saying this, doing that, or thinking that? Yes, thinking, even thinking. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always etching something all the time. From my higher self or not. Lesson 16, Course in Miracles reminds us we have no neutral thoughts. There is no such thing as idle thoughts, for every thought you have contributes to truth or illusion. So what do you want these themes to call forth, these times to call forth in you? That is, what would you like to be etching into the universe? Are you doing that right now? Gandhi said, my life is my message. Who in your life would you trust to ask, what message do you see me putting out there? What do you see me etching into the universe? Who in your life might you ask that? If I believe that my thoughts, my words, and actions contribute to peace for all three of those need to be watched. Thoughts, words, actions, for each etches something in the world that has impact in some way. Remember Etch-a-Sketch? Some of you might be old enough. Etch-a-Sketch, I loved it. There were two dials at the bottom. We twisted the dials to draw a picture. It was like aluminum powder on the back of the screen. It would leave a solid line. And how when you turned it upside down and you shook it, remember what happens? It disappears, right? Do you also remember that it left a ghost of what you etched? Our actions and words and thoughts leave those ghosts and those traces too. Nothing's completely erased. I'd like to leave what I know I have within me etched on the world. Not just what comes out of my mouth because I'm impatient, or what might pop into my head because pollen is rampant, or because I'm anxious? What do you want to etch into the world? Think for a moment. One thing. Nothing is too small. Think for a moment. One thing you will etch into the universe today. Something you already have within you. There's a story of a monk being chased by a tiger. He runs off the cliff. He grabs a tree branch that's growing out of the cliff, and he looks down, and below him is another tiger roaring. So there he is, right in the middle, their dinner. And he looks to the side, and he sees this strawberry bush growing out of the cliff. And he sees the most delicious, luscious-looking strawberry, and with one hand, he grabs it, and he eats it. And he said, "This is the most delicious strawberry I have ever eaten." Now, the reverend who told us that said he doesn't know how it ends, but probably not well for the monk. What he did know is that in the midst of stress, the monk experienced pleasure. In fact, lusciousness, what we have within us. In the midst of crisis, experiencing pleasure. I struggle with that. All right, so I struggle, okay, but I still believe that's what I have within me. And yes, I'm working at it. And at moments, I have experienced being anxious and tasting that strawberry. Perhaps you have too. Part of the issue is we hear all the time, ever since we've been growing up, what we have within us. Not always so great. From the news, from family, bosses, teachers, from certain churches. I remember in working in HIV and AIDS in the early days, many clients described their thoughts of what they had within them. What they had within them making them damaged goods. Less than human. It was horrific. And today, another virus. But that's not who we are. We do hear about who we are, what we have within us every week, I think at Unity, reminding us that greater things than this rock are ours. But who do we believe? The Unity principles, or are we slave to our old fears, past experiences, perceptions of others? I know that often I need to choose again and again and again, and I bet some of you do too. We need to be reminders for each other because that's how we chisel away. That's certainly one way we chisel away. Choose again to start using the gifts Spirit has given us and to be reminded that one of those gifts is, as someone said, how truly necessary we are to each other. So have you ever asked anyone, remind me what I have within me? I really haven't. Now, friends have told me at some glorious times, reminded me what I have within me, and at much less than glorious times. That's been wonderful. What if I actually asked someone to remind me of what I am not seeing at a time I needed new eyes, to remind me of a true identity, tell me what I'm forgetting? Who would you go to? Who could see the light beneath all that dust and darkness that's been piled up? Where could you go to help keep you living where Spirit is, to call you back to it when you wander off? Maybe read spiritual readings, call Silent Unity, pray, meditate, certainly. But let's not forget the universe has given us each other for reminders. We are one another's mighty companions, perhaps now more than ever. In our shared vulnerability, and Brene Brown reminds us that it's a myth that vulnerability is a weakness. Instead, she says, vulnerability is the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. In that shared vulnerability, we are capable of being more kind, more compassionate, more patient, even as we're fearful. Our fear might be great, said Buddha, but greater, yes, yet is our connectedness. So take what you have within you, etch something meaningful into today, not tomorrow, today. Don't worry about adding something new. Just chisel away and etch something deeply into the universe with those gifts that you already possess. The person next to you on this screen needs you. Our country needs you. This world needs you. We all need what you have within you. So please etch deeply. Mm. And now, please join me for meditation. Time to go inward. Let the chair, floor support you. Allow yourself to be supported and to breathe. Breathe on purpose. And just notice your breath. Allow it to be as it is. Now breathe a little deeper. Breathe in and then exhale a little longer. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, soften down the length of your body. Letting go into the universe around you. Thoughts will come, welcome them, and let them go as if they were clouds. Clouds in your mind simply floating by. Whatever appears, appears. No need to judge, no need to label them, no need to attach to them or to figure out anything. They'll be there later on, so let them dissolve like snowflakes falling on a warm pond. And spend a few moments in silence, being open to your inner guide. No need to search, just wait. Wait and be open to that reminder of what you have within you. Time to return to your space, gently, always gently. Know that you can take refuge in this presence during these days, during all moments of your life. Although you're in your own space, know that you're being held by your community. Take a moment, soften into that embrace. Come back to your space. Come back to this moment, knowing that, as someone said, a new world does not appear to you. A new world appears through you. Many blessings. I miss you very much. and I can't wait to see you.